An incredible thing happened when Church Answers University offered some scholarships through this podcast. We got a lot of requests for the scholarships. And so what happened is the first several of them were grabbed up quickly. We went back to the donor and the donor said, I'll do at least one more. So we did one more and one more person got the scholarship. Well, why am I saying that? The donors come back and the donor, she is offering us 5 more scholarships. Now, what does that mean? Church Answers University is your alternative for ministry training, for theological training, for those who could not go to a seminary or maybe to a Bible college. And it's being used by lay persons who are coming on staff with churches. It's being used by bivocational pastors. It's even being used by 50 students in Uganda who do not have training otherwise. It is an incredibly fast growing, but even more than the growth is the ministry impact that it's having. So we're delighted that Church Answers University is our sponsor and that they are offering 5 more scholarships, 50% each. Now, what that means is full tuition is $1,497 to be exact. And what that means is you're getting it for under $750, all 10 courses, all the books complete because of the generosity of a donor. We're delighted that Church Answers University is the sponsor of Rainer on Leadership, and we're delighted to offer these on a first-come, first-served basis. What do? You write Matt, M-A-T-T, at churchanswers.com. Matt, M-A-T-T, at churchanswers.com. If you want to find out about Church Answers University, you can go to churchanswers.university. But if you're interested in a scholarship, write Matt at churchanswers.com. First come, first serve. We're delighted to have this ministry, and I know it can make a difference in your life, your ministry, and your church.
Thank you for that great word from our sponsor. Glad to have them as part of Rainer on Leadership. Dad, it's good to have you as well on your own show.
Hey, it's our show. I mean, I was proleptic when I called it Rainer on Leadership.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument it should be Rainer's now, but, who needs to change the logo at this point?
I think that would be awkward. Rainer's own Leadership. I just like the way it is. So if I happen to croak in the middle of a podcast, you just continue on. And
I will. I promise you I'll finish the show. I don't know what I'll do after the show, but I promise I'll finish.
Boy, I bet that will be that'll have to be one of our highest rated. Come watch Thom die on the podcast.
No, I'm not going down that because it's on YouTube as well. That would just be bad for all sorts of reasons.
I know it would be, but just think of the viewership.
All right, let's move on. Let's move on.
What are we talking about in episode number 801 or more?
Yeah, and that's from if you listen to the previous episode, we really don't even know how many episodes we've done because we had to do some file transitioning, and it's we
lost
there.
A few
800-ish. Who knows?
So when we moved over, counting those that we've added since then, we have this is number 801. I think we've done more than 1,000 though, Sam.
Yeah, we're talking about church fostering today, 5 current trends, and this is something that is a big deal. Now, what is church fostering? Church fostering is one church helping another church for a specific amount of time. So we've often mentioned adoption, which you could kind of call a church merger or a church takeover. That's previous language. We prefer the term adoption because it implies kind of a biblical family sort of connection.
Welcome to the family, right?
Welcome to the family. Fostering is just that, just like you would do in the foster system with the child. The whole goal is to get the child back to the family. You want that child to be back with mom and dad or whoever the guardian is. And with the church, you want them to get back to that level of health to where they're on their own. So fostering and adoption, a lot of similarities into how you approach them, but the goals are different. And there will be cases where fostering turns into adoption, just like in the foster care system with children. But that's not, when you foster, the goal is let's get these children back to their families. So the whole goal of church fostering is not to be a foot in the door to get the campus. It's rather to do what you can to give it your all to get that particular local congregation back to a place of health.
Which brings up we could have an entire episode on the wrong attitude about church fostering. Two extreme attitudes. One would be the one you just mentioned. A church says this is going to be our segue to take over another church. We're going to help them, but our plan is really we're going to take them over. That's a wrong attitude. And then there's another wrong attitude, which is from the foster church that says, "Hey, let's get some of their money and their resources, and maybe they can get us on our feet, but let's take advantage of them for a while." I realize that that's probably not the best way to say it, but there are some within churches that have semblances of those attitudes, and those are two of the wrong attitudes.
Yeah. Motive is so much of, often motive determines success, really. If poor motives can lead to outcomes that really are not desirable, and good motives often are enough to carry you through. Now, motive alone isn't enough, but a good motive alone isn't enough to really see success. But yes, you've got to have the proper perspective with this. Don't use fostering as a way to just get a campus. Just don't do that.
And don't use being fostered as a way to become dependent and have someone else pay your way. So both,
yeah,
both extreme.
I'm seeing more and more of that.
Yes.
And you know what is a key driver of this is deferred maintenance.
Ooh, that's
Churches
a good point.
They get into a place where they can't afford the campus, and so they kind of finagle some things to get some help. And I understand it. We fostered a church that had a lot of deferred maintenance, and it was tough. It was very tough to know what to do. We have a lot of deferred maintenance at West Bradenton that we've been working through. And you know who recently helped us with a very big project?
I knew that you were going to call Brown Church Development. I knew. So those guys, first in class.
Oh my goodness, Dad. It was such a relief to have them helping us. They were giving us some insight into a project we're doing. And, I called Todd.
A deferred maintenance project.
Deferred maintenance project. And Todd provided, they provided so much help. It was a very big relief to be talking to them. So put a link in the show notes. If you have any sort of facility issues, that's really who you need to be calling, because that's a key part of fostering and adoption is the state of the campus, the state of the facility. I mean, what kind of money is this going to require to keep it going? And that is it's not the only thing, obviously, with fostering and adoption of churches, but it is a big thing. I would, if I was looking to foster or adopt a church, I would be calling Brown Church Development Group to help me out to understand, what's going on here.
Just for clarity, because we have a long-term partnership with Brown Church Development, they are a design build firm. So they build churches. They build buildings, different buildings, from the worship center to education space, office space to recreational space. They build it, but they also are getting more and more into this area of deferred maintenance or reconfiguration of churches as well. And they're the best in the business out of Kearney, Nebraska. We have been blessed to be introduced to them and become their partner over the last few years. Anyway, I think we got another subject. I think
we do.
That was one of those roads we traversed down that it's time to come back again.
Well, the interest in fostering is still strong. We hear all the time from people about being fostered, seeking out other churches to foster. And it's this movement that I want to say it was there before the pandemic, 3-4 years before the pandemic, people were beginning to talk about this concept that is church fostering. The idea of churches helping churches have been around. Let's just be real. That's been around since, Paul was writing letters. So, that's not a new concept, but tying it to this idea of fostering, that is relatively new. That's within the last, 5 or 6 years that we've seen this movement, and the movement's still very strong. The problem is churches don't know what to do. There's churches that can help. They don't know where to begin. There's churches that need help. They don't really know what to do. Even though there's a lot of interest, we're not seeing as much connection between churches as what we would like.
That's right. I thought with the level of interest that we're seeing, and by the way, we have a resource on church fostering, and we can put that in the show notes as well. So we'll let you look at that. It was a panel resource. I think you really get a lot out of it. I thought with the noise about church fostering, noise, I'm referring to conversation, not negative noise. with all the noise of conversation, I thought we'd be hearing about a lot of churches that are being fostered. And it seems to be moving more methodically or slowly than I thought it would. It's happening, but it's not this big jump into either being fostered or to fostering. And I think some of it has a lot to do with what you said. A lot of churches don't even know where to begin with this.
Yeah. In fact, that is what, when churches contact us at Church Answers, that's what they say is, I don't even know where to start. And I would just say, start small. Start with helping out with worship ministry or children's ministry. We started, when we were fostering what is now our Southside campus, it did lead to an adoption. More on that here in just a little bit. When we started with them, it was just helping them clean up their facility. I mean, it really was that simple. We also fostered a church south of us in Sarasota. It was more like a 6-month fostering, and it was all deferred maintenance. They did not have they had people, but they were older. They didn't have the people to get in there and gut rooms and paint and all that stuff. So we sent crews down there just to help them get their facility up to spec. A lot of aesthetic stuff, but stuff you need in a church. So I would just say start small. If you don't know where to begin, you can foster a church with, on a limited basis with just 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and that can go a long way in a church. If that church has like 15 people, sending them like 3 people is a big deal.
And one of them might be helping in the children's ministry. Another may lead in worship. Another may be playing piano. Who knows? But there are all kinds of possibilities there. Sam, leaders of the fostering church, and I better correct number 3 so I can make sure that we're saying this right. Leaders of the fostered church, not the fostering church, struggle with limiting the period of fostering. In other words, they want more than just 6 months or a year.
Yes, they always want more. We've done this a few times at West Bradenton, and we love it, and we love helping. But if you send 5, they'll want 10. If you send 10, they'll want 20. If you help with facilities, they also want help with kids. If you help with the worship ministry, can you do this too? And it's completely understandable. I mean, it's just like this church that was struggling now has help. They've now got attention. They're feeling the energy. They've got the shot in the arm. All of a sudden people are like, well, what about this? What about this? They've moved from a place of desperation to a place of hope. But you really have to work on scope. And we have something in our world, Dad, that we call scope
creep. Right.
Yes. So when we do a consultation, we have to lay out very clearly what we're going to do and when we're going to do it and how we're going to do it. And inevitably churches will come back and say, well, what about this? What about in the middle of the project? And you want to be kind about it and you want to be fair, but it's like, yeah, we can do that, but you're going to have to pay more, right? I mean, we didn't include this in the scope.
Take more time.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, this was great. Can you come do a presentation to the whole church? It's like, yes, but you need to pay for our flights and stuff because we didn't include that in the cost. And so this will happen. That scope creep will happen when you foster a church. And it's to be expected. Particularly if they get excited about what's going on, they are going to ask for more. That's actually a good sign, not a negative sign. But you need to limit the time period and you need to limit the scope and you need to be crystal clear about what you will do, what you won't do, and what's going to happen. Otherwise, you do build a level of dependency. If you play into, okay, we'll do that, okay, we'll do that, okay, we'll do that, and it's just a constant dribble of extra things, you're actually not helping that church anymore. You're training them to just get dependent. What they want. Yeah, you're training them to be dependent. And so I think fostering works best when there is a particular time period with a particular scope and you stick to that plan.
By the way, we were talking about scope creep and consultations just as a point of comparison. We have a person on our staff who is the scope creep enabler. His name is Brad Wagner. I'm not worried about him listening to this because he won't. He may not even.
He's so bad about it. It's like he gives it away. It's like, let me teach this client to do scope creep.
And so they keep calling him. Well, I'm using my own time. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're teaching our client that dependency is okay and scope creep is okay. Well, I just did it one time. No, you didn't.
Yes.
So
Honestly, I love
that.
that about him. I love that about our team, that we want to do as much as we can for the churches that we serve. But yeah, he is awesome in so many ways, and he's awesome at scope creep. Yes.
Yes, he is. Brett, what are you doing? This is not part. I need to put you on another project. Well, I got to have a few more meetings. No, don't do that. I love his heart. All right, Sam. Key question: how does a church find a church to foster? You're West B. You're the church at Spring Hill. You're such and such community church, Methodist, Presbyterian. How do you find a church to foster? Where do we begin?
Yeah. If not the number one question, one of the top questions that we get asked in this world of fostering is where do we find one, or how do we find one? I would say it's a lot easier than you might think. And it's simple. It's a lot of lunches. It's a lot of dinners. It's a lot of connection and coffees. I go to a lot of Rays games, a Tampa Bay Rays fan. At the time of this recording, they're 11-0. When this releases, we'll see where they're at. But it's a pretty phenomenal start to the season.
You just said where they're. Did you know you just said where they're at?
Yes, I know.
You just ended a sentence with "at," and I tell the team never to say where are you at. I'm sorry. Go on.
The written form and the spoken form of the word are very different, and colloquialisms are allowable in the spoken word where they might not be in the written word. But we could argue about that on.
I don't know where you got that at.
We could argue about it on air, but it's going to bore the listeners to no end.
All right, we'll turn back to the question: where do you find a church to foster? Where's it at?
Pastors. It's pastor to pastor.
It is.
It's staff to staff. That's where at times the members will, the membership of the church will seek out help or something, but that's pretty rare. Most of the time, it's staff to staff, pastor to pastor. And a lot of these churches, it's a bivocational pastor who's very much off the radar. They've, got a full-time job. I don't have a whole lot of time. So it's, hey, come over to dinner for Friday night. Let's get to know each other. And your motive is very pure. It's not, ooh, that's a small church. Maybe we can poach them. The motive is, this is a bivocational pastor who probably doesn't have as big a network as he would like. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, I'll have you over for dinner. And just get to know them. And then things will happen. There'll be some smaller churches that are doing just fine. They just happen to be small. There's other smaller churches that have been through years of declines and they're hanging on by their fingernails. Well, you'll find all that out just by connecting with pastors. It really is that simple. And as you talk about the vision that you have to help other churches, inevitably you'll have 10 lunches and coffees or what have you. And one person, I don't know the percentage, I'm just making that up, but 1 out of 10, hey, could you do that for us? And it really is that simple. How does my church find a church to foster? It is pastor to pastor, just getting to know each other, which, by the way, you should be doing anyway.
I still have 2 key questions that I am learning from pastors that are looking to help churches, sincerely looking to help churches, that they said at times expedites the process. 2 questions. Number 1, how can I pray for your church? And number 2, is there anything specifically we can do for your church? Those 2 questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me tell you, when you actually step up to the plate and help, it is such a breath of fresh air for the churches that are struggling.
We do not have precise data on adoption versus fostering. So we cannot say unequivocally that, of all these fostered churches, this certain percentage ends up in adoption. But at least from those that we see anecdotally, it's happening a little more than half the time. So here's Sam said it so well. Don't go into a fostering arrangement to poach a church. Those were his exact words. But go into a fostering arrangement with your eyes open that adoption is a possibility. Sam has an adopted son. He has given me this incredible grandson named Dominic. Dominic started off as a foster child. I asked Sam and Aaron outright, I said, is this going to lead to adoption? And they said, that's not the goal. Our goal is to get Dominic reunified with his family, in this case, his mother. And I said, okay. But Sam and Aaron also went into this relationship like a lot of fostering relationships, saying it's always a possibility. And so I think you have to go with your eyes open that when you are fostering, you're not looking to take the church. You're not looking to acquire the church. You're not looking to merge with them or to adopt them, but it's a possibility. So you need to be prepared in case they approach you. Sam, didn't Southside approach you, your church, in that way?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a saying among foster families that you're not supposed to say out loud, but I will anyway, which is if you foster long enough, you'll end up adopting. And it's just really a statement like the system's so broken and things are so bad that, unfortunately not every case works out. And, you'll foster several children and then, hey, now that one, they need to be adopted. And, every adoption begins with a tragedy. If you think about it, every single child that's adopted, there's some tragedy that led to that point. All the stories are different. Every case is different, but there's always a tragedy involved. And I would say the same with the church. Any church that is adopted, it began with something. I don't know if tragedy is the right word, but it began with something that's wrong. And, but yeah, I would say, I think a 50% mark it's a good estimate. It's just a guess on our part.
It is.
But for churches that do, we've fostered 3 churches, we've adopted 1, so we're at 33%. And I imagine that as the more we do, we'll probably get closer to that 50% mark.
And here's what will happen: the more you foster it, particularly if at least one leads to adoption, there will be more churches that will start coming to you saying, I hear you helped a church. I hear that you took a church into your family or adopted them. So there is a momentum that can take place after you've done the first one. So that's another reason why the percentage could get higher for you, from the 33% to even greater than that. Well, I hope this has been very helpful. We're watching the trends on church fostering. We've talked about it on more than one occasion. We continue to follow it and we'll continue to provide information. Sam, before we go, I know you want to thank Tyndale, our sponsor, and for all that they are doing and for the great resources that they provide the church and specifically our listeners and viewers at Rainer on Leadership.
Yeah, we certainly want to thank Tyndale for sponsoring the show. Do you need resources to help parents navigate the conversation of identity? Boy, that's a big question that's out there right now. Understanding what is influencing teens today when it comes to identity is hard enough. Starting the conversation with teens about gospel-centered identity can be even harder. So equip the parents of teens in your ministry with resources that tackle the timely topics of body positivity, sexuality, eating disorders, fear, worry, that what you're worth, those sorts of things. Access's updated parents' guides to finding the true identity offers biblical wisdom, topical information, and engaging discussion questions that will help parents with these tough teen topics in a way that is reflective of the gospel. So grab a copy at your favorite bookstore. Again, that's Access Parents Guides to Cultivating Lifelong Conversations with Your Teen. We'll put a link in the show notes as well. Thank you, Tyndale, for sponsoring the show. And thank all of you for listening. Good to see you, YouTubers. Good that I can't really hear you listeners, but you can hear us. So thank you for tuning in. Give us a thumbs up, a like, a positive rating, a good review. If you did not like the show, then just leave us alone. Please don't say anything negative because it hurts my feelings. But we'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel for those of you who are listening through YouTube. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well. double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.